Welcome to the channel. This is my MEC 600 Junior. This is quite an early version. I've had this thing for a long time, and even then I bought it new, used off auction. The new version, I think they're up to Mark 5, has a lot more plastic bits and pieces. Basic functionality is really rather simple. We have on the top there are two reservoirs. I'll only have a single one right now for the shot. Next to that would have been the powder, and that can be tilted back. Then we have 5 stations. The first station is the full sizer, and it also opens up the petals at the top of the hull. Then the next station is the primer seating die. Then the next station does a whole bunch of things. Predominantly, first of all, we're opening up the petals again. We're then inserting the powder. Then comes the hull on top. Then comes the shot. Then the next station is the pre-crimp. And finally, we have the final crimp. Now, I have modified this thing extensively. So let us go through the list of modifications. So modification number 1, this here used to have a hole in it with a thread in it to secure the depriming pin. See, that screws in, and then the idea is that you could tighten the grub screw and it would hold the depriming pin in place. That hole was annoying as hell because what would happen is the petals would get stuck in it and basically mushed it up. And so I've just filled it with a bit of a screw thread and then machined it level. Next, I have bonded these guys together. Now this pin here that holds this ejector, this is, if you watch the basic operation, it goes down. And then when we go up, this here, up here, levers this guy down and basically ejects them. This ring here does the full sizing. Now when you have a bigger hull, if you have a look, this one here is slightly larger. That can get dicey, which is why this up here is adjusted to maximum. And this is quite low down. Realistically, this wants to be twisted on a little bit more, which is why I've bonded in place with some epoxy, so I can have this length as the maximum that I can eject even hulls which have big rims. For the priming station, this is not a standard, this is part of a kit where the primers fall through. I got rid of that, I wasn't a particular fan of that. And I can seat the primers down here, basically goes the primer, and then you're seating it on top like so. And as you push this down, this is spring loading, you can put the primer in. Now this over here is for 12 gauge, but I have also created one, this one here, see you can just untwist this up there and put this guy in, and that'll do 20 gauge. And then I have another one down here, this is like what, 36 or 410 in the UK. With that then I can basically prime all the shotshell calibers that I have, and all on the same machine, and it's kind of like effort free. You just make these up out of a bit of steel, you know, it's nice and simple. We're now on the other side. This over here then is the station that delivers the shot. This is unmolested, this is just as is. The one over here I have modified, you can see those white marks on it. This is the pre-crimp. So if we have a look, that'll basically kind of pre-crimp the case. And if we look at this, on the inside, you can see where the crimp is going to hit. And I want that to line up with the petals that I have. And so I have marked the location where we apply the crimp with some white marker pen. And that way you don't end up in that awkward situation where you apply the pre-crimp in the wrong place and you end up with something that's like mush like that. This is not going to produce a very good crimp. See, I mean down here for example, they say in their literature that it'll auto-adjust. It really doesn't. So you're better off putting markings on the outside and just taking a little second care to line up where your old crimp was with where your new crimp is going to be. And then you're going to get good results every time. Now, next station over, this one over here, that's the final crimp. And you can adjust inside there is a flat bit of steel that'll basically provide the top. And you can adjust, that's this screw here, which you can adjust. This outer here then basically does the outside and gives you a bit of taper. Now, that I have adjusted up here, this part here is over adjusted. The original design, you wouldn't be able to adjust it all the way, so I just dremeled that out that I had a little bit more space. And with that I can get a little bit more crimp than I otherwise could. And I find that gives me a neater seat. So those are the modifications that I've done. these bottles up here for the shot and the powder, you can use just about any old bottle. See this guy? This is acetone, and if we look at the thread, that thread is going to work just fine in there. You can just screw that in and you'll have a massive powder reservoir. Another alternative, for example, that I've just come across is this guy. This is just some hand sanitizer left over from the pandemic. And yet again, it's exactly the same box standard bottle thread. So you can have extra bottles just by going shopping in Sainsbury's and just picking something that looks about the right size, and chances are it'll fit just fine. And then you can just screw those guys in and that'll give you a couple of extra bottles. First station basically takes the case, and down here this ring, which is removable, basically does the full sizing. And we can take our hull, in it goes all the way down, and that will now have full size the brass. You can also at this stage have the decapping pin in there. Now the decapping pin just twists in like that. I personally have it loose. With that, we can eject the primer. The next station seats the primer. So we take our primer, in it goes, we put the hull on top, and by pushing down, we have seated the primer. The next station is complicated. So we're putting our hull in, down it goes, in goes the powder, up, in goes the wad, down it goes, on top of it goes the shot. So that all happens in one station, like that. We're now on the other side. So we're going to put our hull full of, with the wad and the shot over here. And I'm going to align my white mark together with where the old crimp is. That is the pre-crimp die. And then finally we have the final crimp over there. Shove it in, give it a push down, and that's your finished crimp. On the base plate I have drilled myself a hole to hold the decapper. That's actually very useful. The other thing I've done, I've mounted a couple of magnets to hold this hex key. The hex key will basically do all the hex bolts up here. It's the same one everywhere, so that's nice. And then I have this 7/16 spanner, and that'll do all the various bolts here. I like working with this machine. I think it's got good versatility. I find this tray here, this is to catch the old primers, I find that intensely annoying. I don't know what a better solution is, but this isn't it. This tray flies around this shed like you would not believe. It's just every time you pick this press up, this flies about. So this is the bit that I dislike most about this press. The positives are that this is still something you can get creative with. You know, like I say, you can just make little adapters for the calibers. I'm not sure you can do that all the way for a crimp, but you know, here and there you can kind of mess with it. It's all nice and still metally, so you can just take the angle grinder out and cut some extra grooves, give you a bit more adjusting, weld something on if you need a bit more somewhere. And like this press here has shown, this thing is ancient and it's still going nice and strong. I like this design over here that you can tilt it over. Inside this slider here are a number of bushings. That is a bit tedious, but to tell you the truth, I don't tend to adjust it very often. I kind of have my load and I just run with that. The shot I just run on the maximum, which is like the 1 ounce setting. It has a steep learning curve. I think it'll take you, it took me a long time to figure out all the various quirks. It is very easy to get bad crimps with it. If you look at one of my previous reviews, I have the Lee Loadall, and the Lee Loadall is idiot proof. There are no adjustments. And you just put your 60mm hulls in and all the various components. It'll give you a good crimp. This thing is all adjustments. Everything on here can be adjusted. And to find a combination that works great, well, that takes some time. You really just have to mess with it. I like the fact you're not just stuck with birdshot. You can, for example, these are some slugs that I made on here. See, you got a nice crimp on it, all solid. I'll fire just fine, you know. And it's quite versatile. I've even tried crimping buckshot with this. So that's SG, but that wasn't so successful. The crimp really needs to have something solid to rest again. This spring action over here is surprisingly useful. So the down pushes a little harder, but kind of comes up on its own. I quite like that. I like the reservoirs. I like that the threads are compatible with other things. I think this is a great press. It's a little bit more than a Lee Loadall 2. And if you are 100% new to shotshell reloading, I would start with the Lee Loadall 2. I mean, shotshell reloading is quite boring, and you can lose your enthusiasm with a cheap piece of equipment. You don't have to buy something posh. And always remember, reloading birdshot is not really economically viable. You might as well buy the loaded stuff. You don't really save a lot. So those are my thoughts. I hope you found them interesting, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.